Martin Luther King Jr. Isn't it strange how the vegan movement, very much like the Black rights movement, Black Lives Matter, and so on and so forth, began with this touchstone, this common cultural reference of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It began with the premise, it began with the recruiting promise that we were all going to be like so many thousand little Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s. It's certainly very easy to imagine African American children, especially, growing up with the picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in a textbook, hearing his voice from televised interviews, whether they literally shown in the classroom by their teacher or seen on YouTube, through internet media, shown to them by their parents. Documentary, the life of the great man being presented to you. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. certainly chose the right time to die, to be immortalized in this uncritical way as a faultless, stainless hero. If you've done a little bit of research, you can easily imagine how if he had lived for just another 10 years, he might be remembered very differently. If he had gone on to become a corrupt elected politician in his old age, things might be remembered very differently. But no, he died at the right moment and is thus immortalized, in the mind's eye, having this certain symbolic value. Now, I have fans from Poland. I have fans from Hungary. I have fans from all around the world. I really do wonder what the hell it means to them when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is held up in this way as a self-evident, complete explanation of how it is we're going to accomplish political change personally as individuals in our conduct and collectively as a movement. That all we need to do is point to the example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and everybody in the movement. They're like atoms clicking together to form a molecule. Oh, we all know what to do without anyone involved having read kind of a single book or essay about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what he did right and what he did wrong. And then what do we see has actually happened in the vegan movement over a period of 20 years? Tell me something. Did Martin Luther King Jr. have an OnlyFans? Did Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. do softcore porn? Did he appear on page 3 of a magazine in his swimsuit? Did he do lifestyle activism? Did he and his wife pose with their expensive car, half naked or in their bathing suit? Well, how is it possible that the whole movement, step by step, went from what's still espoused, intentionally and consciously, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. model, to what could be frankly called the social media fame whore model of activism? That's how we're going to change the world. Now, look, I understand some people are frustrated with my pointing the finger relentlessly at this problem at the core of, at the center of the vegan movement in the 21st century. They say, oh, well, can't we talk about Aristotle? I get it. I do have quite a few. If you just search for the word Aristotle, I have quite a few videos and live streams on this channel talking about the philosophy of Aristotle. How delusional would I have to be to sit here and tell you, look, guys, the most important thing for us to buckle down and deal with in veganism, in ecology, even in sort of pro-democracy movements, any political movement you want to talk about in the 21st century, the most important thing for us to wrestle with here is the legacy of Aristotle's politics. I wish this were true. We have to have some kind of debating club about properly understanding Aristotle's intellectual legacy. No, of course, if we can just be honest about it, this is the single greatest problem, and it's not short term. It's not going away. The problem is intensifying. The problem is becoming greater and greater in its scale and significance. Now, with that being said, of course, it's not the only problem. I'm going to mention these other problems in parallel because you can imagine how they shape who attends an event, who gets to speak on stage at an event, and who reciprocally is silenced, who is relegated to the audience and refused the opportunity to speak, who is promoted into a leadership position. And this promotion may be formal and it may be informal. It may be an organization like PETA selecting someone to make them into a spokesperson, selecting someone, giving them a promotion to a position of power. And it may be through informal crowdfunding, whether that's literally donations on OnlyFans, followers on Patreon, the number of views people get on YouTube. It's a selection process that's somewhat spontaneous, organic, and grassroots, but that nevertheless chooses winners and losers. It chooses who gets to have a voice and who does not, who has power and influence and money and fame, who it is that is a de facto important person in the movement and who is insignificant. Can you imagine a political movement where this was my experience with the Green Party in Canada when I was a member of the Green Party, where the conferences are dominated by communists, where the people who get to speak on stage are people who are willing to open their lecture with blunt statements of their fealty to, their belief in, the extent to which they are beholden to the principles set down by Karl Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and where everyone in the audience mumbles their assent and nods when these things are said about this totally discredited set of economic theories, these odious dictators from the past, and so on. Okay, now look again. So I go to, this is many decades ago, I go to ecological events, Green Party events, environmental politics events. Okay, the vast majority of reasonable people who show up, whether they are left of center, or right in the center, they show up, they see this is a bunch of crazy communists. They see what each speaker says when they get up at the podium. They realize this is organized by, this is dominated by communists, and they silently stand up and walk out the door and never come back. They don't debate with you. They don't have a conflict with you. They just, oh, I thought this was about ecology. Now, what it was they were expecting, it could be they showed up at an ecological event and they thought it was going to be a bunch of people who care about forest habitat, a bunch of people who care about hunting. They could be people who are hunters in the forest. They might have expected a lot of conservatives who are into conservation. There's all kinds of different reasons why people may be interested in ecology. Certainly one particular psychological type is the kind of tech geek, the nerd who really likes solar panels and really likes wind farm power generation. Someone who wants to really get into the technical details of electricity and that side of it. There are all kinds of different personalities they might have been expecting to encounter. And then they show up and realize, okay, whoa, this is basically a front organization for the Communist Party. I'm out. Okay. So I've been in that situation, but I was the one person in a million who was bold enough to actually confront the speakers, to actually stand up and get in the mic and say, I can't believe, sorry, I forget what year it is. I can't believe this is the year 1998 and this is what I'm hearing. I can't believe I'm hearing statements that are pro-Stalin and pro-USSR at a Green Party event or at an ecological event. Now, obviously in that circumstance, this was Toronto, Canada, around the year 2000, obviously, if you actually want to exclude communists, that's going to be a different kind of policy with different kinds of implications. If you're supposed to say, no, we're not going to let anyone on the mic, you're going to be banned or kicked off. If you're a communist or making pro-communist statements, that's going to entail its own problems. Okay, so tell me something. Let you care about veganism, you care about ecology, you care about global warming, you care about these issues. What happens when you go to an event? You go to a conference, you go to meet people face to face, you're looking for colleagues, you're looking for people who are going to work with you to change the destiny of mankind, frankly. Yes, and spare the suffering and misery of millions of animals, however you want to put it. Okay, that's what you're looking for. And you show up, and the whole event is dominated by dietitians and nutritionists who just want to talk about rates of diabetes, rates of heart attack, rates of cancer, and the impact veganism can have on those things. Now, unlike communism, unlike making excuses for Stalin and Mao Zedong, okay, that's not evil. Also, unlike, say, the economic theories of Karl Marx, That is not a debunked pseudoscience. A lot of what dietitians and nutritionists have to say about the vegan diet in relation to heart attacks, cancer, blood pressure, diabetes, whatever the case may be, there's scientific merit to what they're doing. Nevertheless, right? So a guy like me, I'm going to walk out the door. Okay? And again, I want to repeat this. There is a kind of exclusion that goes on here. You will show up at that event and you will have the impression correctly. Oh, I can never be on stage. I can never be the person in the microphone. I am going to always be silenced in the audience. I'm going to be relegated to the audience where I don't get to speak. All I get to do is applaud and donate money because I am not a medical doctor. I do not have a PhD in nutritional science, chemistry, one of these. Okay, so I'm disempowered by that. Now, again, could also be a conference where it's like, oh, well, I'm not a communist. I'm not one of these left-wing academics with credentials, a degree in Marxism, or what was it, labor organization theory or something as a code word for Marxism or communism. I'm not one of these people, so I can never be on stage. So I can never be, I will always be relegated to the audience this way. Now, again, we can imagine other hypotheticals. You could go to a conference related to Buddhism, go to a conference related to other things, where there's this kind of implicit structure of, again, kind of promotion and encouragement for one group of people, but actually silencing and excluding other categories of people. I had a conversation many, many years ago with a YouTuber who is today called Vegan Gaze. And at the time, she was called Flemface. Her name, she uses her real name openly, Ellie Fleming. So she's still a vegan YouTuber to this day. And she told me this. She is not the only woman to tell me this. That when she first was coming on the mic, first coming on the camera, which I think would have been 2016, 2017, 2018, this period, what she was told again and again was, you can't do this because you are not good looking enough. You are not beautiful enough. You are not physically impressive enough. Like from the neck down, you are not showing off your body in skin tight, revealing attire. Okay. Now, Ellie, this YouTuber, Vegan Gaze One Place, she is actually more attractive than average. We could actually get into the advantages she has on social media. And I believe she got into YouTubing and live streaming right after she finished university, right after she finished some college. That's a distant memory from us many, many years ago now. But she and I talked back then. We didn't know each other super personally, but we talked. So this is a good-looking young woman in the prime of her life. And that is what she's being told again and again and again. Nobody said to her, you can't do this because you've never read Aristotle. Nobody said, hey, you aren't politically sophisticated enough. You aren't at a high enough level of knowledge of politics, philosophy. You are not intellectual enough to take on this job. And nobody said, well, you don't really have enough in common with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Right? This is a funny thing. From day one, and so consistently still to this day, what we're told, what we're taught again and again and again is, be like Martin Luther King Jr. Like you, everyone in the audience right now, you can get out. You can be your own Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's like be your own Jesus. Be your own personal Jesus. Be your own Martin Luther King Jr. You can be the leader of your own movement. You can be this iconic civil rights, anti-slavery, animal liberation, pro-ecology figure. You can walk in the same footsteps as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Nobody talks about what credentials Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Nobody talks about what he actually did. Nobody says to Ellie Fleming at the start of her career, like, oh, well, you better go back to university and get a degree in theology or get a degree in the comparative study of religion. You better be prepared to go from church to church, and give lectures this way. Now, at this moment, I don't know anyone doing this kind of activism for ecology or for veganism. I don't know anyone. Now, I can't say absolutely nobody is doing it. It's possible there are some eccentric Christians or eccentric Buddhists or whatever who really are touring. So I'm a former scholar of the Buddhist faith myself. I still really have a lot of expertise frankly, in all religions, and Christianity, Judaism. Well, I really do come out of a kind of scholar of religion background, and it comes up in passing on this channel every so often. But no, what we're doing is kind of invoking the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Nobody feels personal pressure upon themselves to live up to the standard set by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is very interesting. You might, right? Like you might be guilt-ridden. Like you feel like, oh, gee, I should be, walking in his footsteps. I should be living up to it. I'm not. No one feels that. What people feel pressure to do, and it is women more than men, what women feel pressure to do is to live up to the standard set by Freely the Banana Girl. And now, this is now 2024, to live up to the standard set by Tash Peterson, aka Vegan Booty, and Stefania Ferrario. Okay? And Stefania Ferrario, to my knowledge, is 31 years old. Okay? 30, 31, thereabouts. Okay. It's not going to last. There is going to be another Stefania Ferrario after Stefania Ferrario. There is going to be another Tash Peterson. Okay? And what are the distinctive elements of this approach to activism? Right? Like, if we can just be blunt, right? Porn. Right? As I've already made several videos talking about this, the separation of politics from pornography. Okay. There's another YouTuber I've interacted a little bit with. She has one video on her channel, or it's almost a book review. It's talking about an issue from my book, and it reads out long quotations from I think chapter 1 of my book. There's another YouTuber called Lucy Munson. Okay. Now, actually, Lucy also, I would say, is above average in terms of how attractive she is. I mean, what is average? Guys, if you're involved in any political movement other than veganism, most political movements are dominated by ugly elderly people. It's not teenagers in bikinis. The successful political movements, successful charities around the world. Have any of you guys gone to conferences for like helping orphans in Syria, the future of Libya, Myanmar, any real Mothers Against Drug Driving? None of these movements have the emphasis on personal beauty. And I want to say this. This is kind of conjecturally, this could happen. This could come true. Imagine if the Black Lives Matter movement, imagine if the general African-American movement against police violence and for a reform of the justice system, imagine if that movement had become obsessed with the sex appeal of its leaders in the same way that veganism has. If it became corrupted by sex appeal, that didn't happen from 2020 to present. That didn't happen. You can imagine a parallel universe in which that did happen, or you can imagine it happening now, happening next. It's just not the case that the most influential voices for Black Lives Matter, who appeared on the news, who published articles, and who received millions of dollars in donations, it's not the case that they were beautiful Black women who had an OnlyFans account, who did porn, or even like Freely the Banana Girl. To my knowledge, Freely never did porn, but who do kind of erotic YouTube videos, erotic bikini photo shoots on Instagram. That didn't happen with Black Lives Matter. It still could. It's not too late. Maybe the next generation of African-American radicals will be, women in bikinis, and maybe men like Timothy Sheaf, men like James Aspie, where 9/10 of their appeal is seeing them with their shirt off, and nobody is asking these questions about them either intellectually or ethically. Okay, so just want to reiterate, I am not talking about physical beauty being a barrier to entry in a simple sense. It's in a complicated sense in which this is totally corrupted the vegan movement. Many, many years ago, closer to 10 years ago now, I remember Vegan Gains making a statement. He's a very blunt fellow, very blunt statement on his channel. Some of you will remember this too. I think all his old videos have been deleted. But he made a blunt statement that only athletic, physically beautiful people should admit that they are vegan in public. He said that if you are fat or ugly, just don't mention it, just lie about it. He was going way beyond claiming that only leaders in the vegan movement should be athletic, beautiful people. He was making the further statement that it makes the vegan movement look bad. It discredits the vegan movement if you are fat and or ugly. That only these athletic beauty icons should even publicly confess to being vegan. Otherwise, you should be vegan in the closet. He was not joking. He was dead serious, and that was how he viewed the present and future of the movement. Okay, so this other YouTuber, Lucy Munson, that's the name she uses for a YouTube channel. And again, she's read my book, or she's read part of my book, at least. You know, I have some connection there. Okay, so think about the experience we talked about with Ellie Fleming. Now think about Lucy Munson, who's new to the movement and getting involved with this. The message is very clear to her. If you want to succeed in this movement, if you want to get ahead, you have to strip down to yoga pants. You have to strip down to your bikini. And we get to see who is willing to do that, right? So from day one, I'm going to blank, Jamie's Corner. Okay, Jamie. So this woman, one YouTube channel was called Jamie's Corner, but her name is Jamie Logan. Right, okay. So sorry, Jamie Logan on Instagram, Jamie's Corner on YouTube, and she has a separate channel for her podcast. So she is about 24, 25 years old. I assume she's been on the internet since the age of 15 or something. You know, like she's very conditioned. From day one, she was down to play this game by these rules. She is showing that she is willing to be the new Freely. She has her bare midriff out at all times. She has bikini shots, she has so on and so forth. So, you know, this is massively influential. And the way in which people are excluded, right, it's not overt. But the way in which people are excluded from a conference about ecology that's dominated by communists is also not going to be overt. They are not going to openly say to someone, oh, well, you're too conservative or you're too liberal even. You're not on the far left enough, so we're not going to let you speak, you know, or we're not even going to let you. These things are all done in the shadows, right? The reality is you have one vegan event after another, and you have the vegan movement as a whole that is dominated by people like Jamie Logan, by people like Stefania Ferrario. Stefania Ferrario is the one on stage with a voice, right? She is not silent in the audience. You know, she is absolutely put into a leadership position in the movement. And any young woman would be correct to apprehend the situation as if they are not willing to make themselves into a sex object, at least to the extent that Jamie Logan has, if not the extent Stefania Ferraro has, Tash Peterson has, Freely the Banana Girl has, you know, then they're never going to make it in this movement. They're never going to matter, right? Now, these incentives and disincentives are going on all the time, all right? I feel pressure to be as intellectual as possible. This is pressure I put on myself, okay? I wish I had a grandparent or something. Just mention this. There are so many books in this apartment I would love to read. Like there was a time when I owned no books, but basically when I moved into this apartment, most of my life I was never had enough stability to own any books. I moved into this apartment at the start of coronavirus. Now I have books that have piled up around me that I've never had time to read. Melissa bought me as a gift many years ago Aristotle's Rhetoric. I've read many, many books by Aristotle. I've never had the time to read Aristotle's Rhetoric. Wouldn't it be great if I had a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or someone that's saying to me, have you gotten around to reading Aristotle's Rhetoric yet? You know, and again, I'm using this as an example because it doesn't relate to vegan activism in some very direct way. We actually have a book about climate change, The Parrot and the Igloo. I would love to read this book. So this is a book, by the way, written by a completely non-vegan author. Unfortunately, the book is anti-vegan, if anything. But it's a book about the history of science and pseudoscience behind climate change. So the history of the kind of the scientific discoveries, and then how various industries and politicians paid for and supported research attempting to debunk the other research, attempts to distract and derail from the conclusions of climate change. So this is the political science of climate change, you might say. But anyway, the story of the scientific discovery of climate change, and then the story of political attempts to conceal climate change, to minimize the significance of it. So that's what the book is about. I'd love to read that book. I'd love to make that a priority. Okay. If you are a vegan on YouTube, okay, going to the gym and looking good with your shirt off, male or female, is your highest priority. There is no pressure on you to be well-read whatsoever, neither in terms of like, really important ancient philosophy. We'll just keep using Aristotle as an example, to be a well-read, well-rounded intellectual, someone who can really muster impressive philosophical concepts, right? Nor in terms of what's currently going on, what's currently breaking. Sorry, the book I'll never have time to read. Anyway, so this is an expose on Donald Trump. Paul, I love to read it. That's why I bought it, in case you hadn't guessed. Good luck. That's why it's on the table too. There is no pressure on you to be well read about current political issues. Donald Trump, Iran, Iraq, Joe Biden, China, none. Absolutely zero. Okay, and male or female, there is enormous pressure on you to look good with your shirt off. This is going on all the time. So whether or not it's presented to you as an overt barrier to entry, the incentives and disincentives that exist in the movement at all times are focused on this element of physical fitness and sex appeal. So guys, if any of you have anything intelligent to say in the audience, you can say this. There are many kind of parallels I want to deal with here briefly. And by the way, Melissa, if you want to, Melissa's become an expert in this stuff too. I mean, look, Melissa had her own YouTube channel. Melissa had her own Instagram. What? Tell me something, Melissa. I was putting pressure on you to be as intellectual as possible. I was putting pressure on you to have real political substance, have something to say of real political substance, so on and so forth. But I think it is fair to say the pressure on Melissa, again, is negative pressure, and also what would be rewarded. It's all about ass, people. I mean, that's about it. It's just nothing else going on. Anyway, I want to pull in some parallels from religion. But I also want to briefly pull in a parallel about stand-up comedy. So, Smash, glad to see you in the audience, man. What's being discussed in this video applies to many things in life other than veganism or other than democratic politics, narrowly defined. It certainly applies to the charity sector, also fundraising for charity. Okay, when you think about the situation for stand-up comedians, Manhattan Island, New York City. Okay, I heard an interview recently with Danny DeVito. I actually didn't hear the whole interview. It was quite boring and stupid. But near the beginning of this interview, Danny DeVito says when he first moved to Manhattan Island, New York City, he had an apartment on Manhattan Avenue. Thank you. That's what he's here for. He had an apartment on Madison Avenue, Manhattan Island, a view out the window of Madison Avenue. He said it had a good bathroom and a good kitchen. It was a great apartment. When he moved to New York City, do you want to guess how much he paid in rent? He paid $50 US per month in rent. And if he got work as an actor in a small off-Broadway production, he would be paid $180 per week. Okay. So at that time, if your rent is $50, if you could earn just $200 a month as a stand-up comedian, right, you can survive in New York City. Today, I mean, I do not think you can get the apartment on Madison Avenue for $2,000. I don't think an apartment matching that description. I think the absolute cheapest apartment you can get in the Lower East Side, so the worst neighborhood, the most drug addict infested neighborhood, probably $3,000 is fair. It's $2,000 exists, but yeah, what you're going to be coping with at $2,000 US a month is terrifying. But okay, $3,000 you can do. And guess what? You cannot earn $3,000 a month in a small off-Broadway production part for in 1 week, let alone 1 month. No, you can't. It's absolutely impossible. Again, I've heard stand-up comedians talk about this directly. As a stand-up comedian in Manhattan, you can earn $20 for a performance. Okay, my rent is $2,000. I get $20 per gig. Again, if you manage to move up, like if you can get people to be honest, how often can you earn $200 per gig? And then how many gigs a month can you do? Stand-up comedy, to this point in Manhattan, it's dominated by people who are born rich. Either you are born rich. There's one female stand-up comedian. So actually, I should use her. She's quite good looking. quite good looking female stand-up comedian, and she got fired from her job due to coronavirus, and they gave her a special severance package. So it's like she had money saved up. A bunch of things happened once. I think she broke up with her boyfriend. She got fired because of coronavirus, and the company was generous. They're like, "Look, we know, we know this is a tough situation for you in." So she was given something like 6 months' salary as a kind of quitting bonus. Yeah, it was a significant amount of money, but the company knew it was there. It's like, "Look, we're sorry, you didn't do anything wrong, but we got to fire you because of coronavirus," whatever it was. So she had this kind of combination of factors where all at once she had more money in her pocket than she was expecting, and she said, "Okay, I'm gonna pursue my dream. Gonna go to Manhattan Island." And of course, she's losing money. Of course, of course, think about the gamble involved there, So, you can be someone with a part-time job and maybe you live in your parents' place and you don't pay any rent, or you're in this kind of extraordinary situation. And then there's porn, right? The financial potential, the ability for you to pay your own rent by doing OnlyFans. And I have seen, again, Melissa and I have just been involved with stand-up comedy. I have seen middle-aged women. I remember one woman, she'd already had a child. She was a single mom. I think her child was about 8 years old. She was totally good-looking enough to do hardcore porn on OnlyFans. Really had her physical fitness together as a middle-aged woman. And the point is, if you're doing stand-up comedy, people see you and they feel, some kind of chemistry because they're watching you be the center of attention on stage. Hopefully you're witty and intelligent on stage too. There's some kind of hook there. You're not just another faceless member. Oh, and now I put her name into Google. Oh, it says link to my OnlyFans. Okay. My point is this, I've kind of held your hands through this scenario hypothetically. We could now see stand-up comedy completely corrupted from the inside out in exactly the same way. If you are a stand-up comedian, male or female, there is more money in being a personal trainer. There is more money in being a fitness influencer. There is more money in doing sexy softcore, look at me in my skin tight gym outfit. And then there is more money in hardcore porn than there will ever be for you in this generation in stand-up comedy. So that pressure is there all the time. So there's more than one kind of selection in politics and entertainment. But one form of selection is just attrition. Who lasts? Who survives? Survivor bias. So if you are making enough money doing porn on OnlyFans to just keep going back to the stand-up comedy club, to keep trying again and again, to keep auditioning again and again, that can lead to your eventual success in a movie or in whatever. You get an HBO special, right? That enables you to try and try. Yeah, to improve your craft, but also just to roll the dice, to keep showing up at the stand-up comedy, to stay there until 3 a.m. or whatever. That's the other thing. You might say, oh, it's easy to have a part-time job with doing stand-up comedy. The hours involved, it's not easy. It's very hard to combine with any other job. Okay, so there's more than one kind of selection. It's not necessarily, oh, you're a sexually attractive woman, or oh, you're a man on steroids. You're a man who's gym maxing and on steroids. Therefore, we're going to let you on stage. Therefore, we're going to give you the chance. No, it may not be up. It may be the way those pressures work over time. And yeah, anyone who's been involved in stand-up comedy will notice the overrepresentation of men on steroids. They are generally not young men. They're normally men who have a few more years of experience. Used to have a factory job. They were always the funny guy at the factory. But a lot of guys, when they're getting to stand-up comedy, they are pumping to please. Okay, so my point is this. You have an ongoing cycle in which the life of the mind is not valued, is not rewarded. Being well-read, even in terms of current events, just politics this week, this month, is not valued, is not rewarded. Okay? Let alone bring you some higher, intellectual standards to bear. And then what is rewarded? What is being selected for? Who are the people who have staying power? Who are the people who are going to survive from 1 year to the next, from 1 decade to the next within vegan activism? No, it is not a minor footnote that currently the most prominent vegan activists in the world are Tash Peterson and Stefania Ferrario. It is not a minor footnote that they are the people on stage and they are the people making the money, so on and so forth. And, I do think the exceptions prove the rule. I utterly despise Wayne Xiong. Wayne Xiong, if you don't know, was the founder of a vegan group called Direct Action Everywhere that I utterly despise. And he tried to get ahead as a kind of pure intellectual in the vegan movement. Now, I do not think he has the brains to play that role, but that is the role he chose for himself. And whenever I talk about this with Sky, so Sky is another vegan YouTuber here. He's appeared on my channel. I've appeared on his channel. What he says about Wayne Xiong again and again is that whenever he raises Wayne Xiong as an example in conversations with other vegans, the response is, who? People don't even remember him. He's not a name that's known or recognized. So Sky is primarily alluding to face-to-face situations with real-world activism, but he's partly, of course, talking about internet conversations like this. Now, look, again, I am Wayne Xiong's opponent. I am his harshest critic. Nevertheless, of course, he's one of the most important and influential people in the vegan movement in the past 20 years. He absolutely is. His philosophy, his approach to action, it deserves to be discussed seriously. In my opinion, it deserves to be criticized and rejected seriously. Not Stefania Ferrario, right? So even a guy like Wayne Xiong, who has had millions of dollars donated to him, he certainly had several years in a row of having about a $1 million per year budget to burn through. And Direct Action Everywhere is now a multi-million-dollar organization. He has now set up his own separate organization. He's had a lot of money and so on. Just being real with you, I do not know how much money Tash Peterson receives a year. It would be interesting to know. I do not know how much money James Aspey, like the male sexy shirtless icons burn through. It would be interesting to know. But I think there's a really interesting sense in which Wayne can't compete. Okay. Now, just credit to Melissa. This is actually Melissa's example she gave me yesterday. The face of the Black Lives Matter movement was Patrisse Khan-Cullors. Okay, she generally pronounces her last name the same as Colors, but whatever. Patrisse Khan-Cullors is hideously ugly. Okay, no offense. By the way, keep in mind, you're advocating for ugly people. I'm pro-ugly in this movement, guys. It's not okay. At no point was Patrisse in the situation of saying, "Look, I can't get on stage because it's all fitness influencers, it's all bikini models. It's the movement is dominated by the lust for physical beauty, where that's all that matters." And no point was like, "Oh well, Patrisse is now forgotten. Her period of fame and influence was short-lived." Like, oh yeah, but then like before and after, the ocean of beautiful people who are just competing to be America's next top model dominated the Black Lives Matter movement. So, by the way, guys, in case you didn't guess, I'm also the harshest critic of Black Lives Matter. My point is, even something like Black Lives Matter is a positive contrast this way. So anyway, I've issued this warning again and again and again. The importance and significance of this now in veganism and in the whole period, let's say 2014 to 2024, has been impossible to ignore. So what are we going to do about it? I'm asking you really seriously, what happens now? What happens next? Let's come back to Martin Luther King Jr. Babe, if you want to say anything, I'm just being real. It can be stupid. It can be. If anyone in the audience wants to say something stupid, I just say, this has been it's been a part of your life every day for 7 years, and people say it to you directly often enough. It is, but it's there implicitly and tacitly, and it's coming up again and again and again all the time. So again, I'll be real with you. I was saying this before about Lucy Munson, saying this about Ellie Fleming, and I could say this for myself also. When I first came on YouTube, my situation was that I was a former scholar of Buddhism, and a lot of what I want to talk about was religion, Buddhism, and 21st century cult groups, like current cult movements in religion, but also ancient religion and whatever. Okay. Within the vegan movement, not one person ever has positively that heading or said, wow, you know what, it's really important to have someone like you in the movement. It's really important to have someone who really knows the reality and history of Buddhist meditation, Buddhist vegetarianism, broadly speaking. Wow, it's really valuable to have someone in the movement who can bring this kind of critical perspective on Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism. And actually, in reality, I know a lot about Christianity and Judaism too. Never once has there been any positive appreciation of that kind of. Never have I been evaluated that way. I have been insulted for it. I have been denounced and defamed for it. People made up lies about this side of my life. I have been repeatedly confronted and insulted because of how much I can bench press, how good I look with my shirt off, like how muscular I am, how lean I am. And famously, there was one of the YouTubers, he was one of the guys I replied to this way, who asked the question sneeringly, can I even run around the block? And you guys may not remember this video, but I just clipped together him saying that, and then a clip of me doing 200 push-ups. These are not normal push-ups. These push-ups with my feet way up high and my hands down low. So you're on this angle. You're really lifting your whole body weight. I weigh more than 200 pounds. I'm pressing 200 pounds for push-ups and doing dozens of push-ups at a time, doing 50 push-ups at a time and stuff. It's like, yeah, guess what? I'm in better shape than you think I am. I have been scrutinized and sneered at and insulted that way through my whole history on YouTube. Oh, yes. So Melissa's just mentioning people saying I'm fat. People coming at me and denouncing me, saying I'm fat and claiming that I'm secretly not vegan. Yeah, people claiming that I'm not even vegan and that I'm not allowed to have, yes, that I'm not allowed to have an opinion, that I'm not a vegan at all because I'm quote unquote fat. Fat by, you tell me fat by what? Definitely not fat by standard American. Just being real with you. I'm not even fat by Greek standards. I'm not fat by Mediterranean standards. We spent time in Greece. But I'm not fat by Russian standards, and I'm not fat by American standards. But you know what? Thailand, I might be fat. I've lived in some Asian countries where the standards for being fat are somewhat different. I get it. But, no, that's true. I've been absolutely, I've been pilloried that way and evaluated with. And well, that's what I was going to. No, that's what I'm going to. No. Well, no, that's what I'm setting up. No, that's what I'm setting up is Melissa's status in this. But my point is this: it's okay. If I were evaluated this way, but in the context of a much broader and deeper kind of political, philosophical, intellectual, and ethical evaluation of me, that would be one thing. If it's like, okay, the stuff about physical fitness and sex, these are only a few feathers in the nest, but then there's all this other really substantive stuff about philosophy. That would be one thing, but it's not the case at all. On the one hand, no, all that I've ever dealt with is this pressure to be, I guess, a Tim Sheaf style sex symbol when I take my clothes off. Nobody's willing to stop us. So Tim Sheaf, part of the problem with him is religious. Part of the problem was just stupidity. Tim Sheaf believed that the earth is flat and all this stuff, but part of it can just be phrased in terms of stupidity or whatever. But no one thinks, wow, it's really valuable to have someone who's incredibly well informed about history, politics, philosophy, and religion. Because Tim Sheaf is also a religious nutcase, as are a huge percentage of the leaders in the vegan movement. Oh, here's a guy who actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to it from an atheist perspective, from a skeptical perspective. No, there's absolutely zero positivity. And look, again, to be fair, in case you guys think I'm feeling sorry for myself, also there are women who want to have sex with me. There's also positivity under that heading where it's just women, whatever. Even if I'm fat, they want to fuck my fat ass, whatever. I'm somebody's type, let me tell you. It's like and that's also a perpetual source of disappointment to me, because women get in touch with me when I have sex with me. And it's like, my response is like, oh, have you read my book? Like, my work? Like, what? Again, so which, like, I've covered so many topics. Oh, so do you want to talk to me about Aristotle? Like, what is, like, of the many, many things you could be interested in, you could be responding to my channel. Are you interested in the comedy side of what I do, the music side of what I do, the dead serious politics side of what I do? And it's like, no, they just want to have sex with me. Like, that's my experience again and again. These women appreciate me in a completely non-intellectual, non-ethical way. So yeah, that's the drumbeat of the movement, and it has been for 20 years. And again, guys, not every political movement is like this. This is just not. This is a unique, special problem with our movement that we have to deal with. This is the problem. So, like, anyway, I was setting this up. So, babe, I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit, but obviously I agree with you. My point was to say, look, if you think it's bad for me, how do you think it is for a 24-year-old female in the movement, which is what Melissa was at one point, right? How do you think it is? Well, I don't even know what age Ellie Fleming was, but maybe she was 21 or something, which I just don't know. How do you think that is? And everybody knows it. Everybody knows the rules of the game. Sometimes they're implicit, sometimes they're explicit. You were going to say some stuff about just the pressure reaction you got.
When I first was on Eisel's channel, he was fresh off of having this con Durian Rider, right. And Durian Rider had Freely on his channel, but also other girlfriends, where kind of it was about exploiting the beauty of his girlfriends as well. And yes. I think there were a lot of people who were either haters of Eisel's channel or like fans of Durian Rider that would come over and comment and say how ugly I was, how, just, not fit to be on. Yeah. And
there were women who thought I could do better. Yeah. Where that was, they were like criticizing you for not being hot enough because they wanted me to be with more of a like fitness. Like that's what they wanted from me.
Oh, yeah. I mean? Yeah. Absolutely.
No, everything you said is true, but then there's this even more perverse angle. Yeah, right.
Yeah. This was a time when Tess Begg was in her prime, and why wasn't Eisel with somebody like Tess Begg? Right. For example, just other beauty icons within the vegan movement. So yeah, there certainly is the case. That is true.
Yeah, and
I'm uglier than Nina and Randa, uglier than everybody else.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So Melissa was mentioning people complaining that Melissa was uglier than
Oh yeah. Then I had this acne thing. Yeah. Certainly a part that I don't talk about, because we normally talk about intellectual things on this channel. My intellectual inferiority, but certainly this is kind of big.
Yeah. And all of this has grown out of this commitment to being like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know what I mean? Like that's what makes it even more fucked up. Don't you want to be like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Don't you want to be like Mahatma Gandhi? Don't you? Yeah, we get some shout outs saying Melissa is hot. Yeah.
It's just that isn't real.
But no, so babe, you mentioned Tess Begg. I think another big example there would be, say, Nimai Delgado. Yeah. Obviously at that time, Freely and Durian Rider themselves. It's like there are only so many paths open to you within vegan activism. And one of them is sexually exploiting yourselves as a cute couple, where you are the hashtag goals sexy couple. You are now, I just want to be real with you. Nimai Delgado's wife, Bianca, she is hideously ugly to me. Like, to me, Bianca Taylor is ugly. I've got my own proclivities. I'm just being real with you. But nevertheless, I realize what the product is there, and you realize what the kind of fantasy is they're selling to the audience, and so on and so forth. And we've been through different periods on this channel, but one of the fantasies I wanted to sell to the audience, by the way, this is for us within this apartment. This reality is, hey, my girlfriend and I read Aristotle together, literally. And in terms of, again, there's this kind of selection pressure. The most recent book we read together was Utopia by Thomas More. So I don't know. I'm just going to give you guys the title here. This is one of the most important books in the history of civilization. Terrible book, but it's really, really important. Now, this was really like my third time reading the book, but like the first time I was a child, you know. And there was one time, anyway, it's not worth going over, but it was a long time ago that I read it the first two times. I just mentioned the second time I read it, there were several articles on the internet from that period of time. So I guess I should mention that, because if you actually Google my name plus Thomas Moore's Job, you're going to get some articles from the last time. But anyway, we sat down and I read it to her out loud. So that really forces you to go through a text slowly. You can't just flip and skip through it. We went through this in some detail, and you can imagine we're sitting there reading the book, and every so often we stop and talk about the political philosophy behind the book. Okay, guys, so just say, we are an intellectual couple. We are living the life of the mind, and we are presenting that to you. And even quite early on the channel, so we did a book review together. Yes, so it's a book about the corruption and dysfunction in the university system called Academically Adrift. That was right at the beginning of my sexual relationship with Melissa. It's been sexual and intellectual from day one, you know. But my point is, there have been many other books we have made videos about together, discussing together. And there have been books we read together where we didn't bother because we didn't feel there was an audience for that. There's kind of positive and negative pressure of that kind, you know. So, you know, also now Melissa and I for a couple of years, we've been drifting into the comedy thing. It's like, okay, can we be kind of more positive by doing these satirical songs, by doing stand-up comedy, by getting into a more creative kind of filmmaking? Okay, instead of like making a depressing documentary film, can we do something satirical and comedic that makes the world a better place that way? So we have different things going on. But yeah, the thing that's fucked up is I am not in any way deluded about what I like about Melissa, what I appreciate about Melissa, you know, and I am not in any way deluded about what the audience likes about and appreciates about Tess Begg. What the audience likes about or appreciates about, you know, the current belle de jour is lean beef patty. You know, she's not vegan. She's just one of these beautiful. You know, I totally get it. There are women with extraordinary bodies. There are women who are extraordinarily hardworking in the kitchen in terms of cuisine. These things are often fair. You know, I get it. And to some extent, it's genetic, and to some extent, it's work ethic and whatever. The problem is this. I can't take a detached attitude and say, well, 99% of what's going on is bimbo shit, but I'm here for the 1% that's really intellectually substantive. That's really about the life of the mind. It's really intellectually substantive, ethically substantive, politically, you know. Like, my point is, it's not even 99% versus 1%. It's 100% versus 0%. Now, I would just say this speculatively. Oh yeah, shout out to the Woke Mob song. Yeah, that was so. Whoever you are, you've got some redeeming qualities. Very few people like that one. I don't know why. That was one of our least popular political satire songs. A lot of people didn't know how to take that. This is this a little right wing? Is this, you know? That one made people uncomfortable, even though it's a really kind of sweet comedic song. Anyway, okay, beauty and sexuality are an element of the American Democrat Party right now, and they are. I've made videos talking about this. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her status is totally a result of her sex appeal, and it's pathetic, and it's bad and evil and wrong. It shouldn't be like that. People really do flatter her through the bigotry of low expectations. She is not held to the standards a man would be held to. She is not held to the standards an ugly woman would be held to. Just because you, okay. So, you know, now there's this controversy in the Republican Party about a good-looking white woman, but she has had a lot of plastic surgery, who was just on the school board. Okay, so again, there's a significant footnote here for how much plastic surgery this woman has had. Her appearance this is in large part a surgically created illusion. With that being said, she is a very striking, very lovely middle-aged woman who is now on the news every day, coming out of politics in Florida. Everyone knows her beauty, her sex appeal is part of her whole story. And I forget what her husband is. Her husband a senator or congressman or something? Her husband is of some, it doesn't matter. but her husband is an elected official of some kind, and she is the sexy wife of an elected politician, and everyone knows that. Okay, but this is not remotely 99% versus 1%. It's not like you show up at a Republican Party conference and say, okay, fine, I'm done with the bimbo shit. I'm done with the weight loss shit. I'm done with where is the real Republican Party? It's not like you would have Democrat Party events like, okay, now I want to deal with real politics. Okay, guess what, guys? Veganism is the only viable solution to carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. If you hate veganism, if you think veganism is bullshit, guess what? It is the only lever we can pull to actually reverse the problem of excessively high carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. And that has knock-on effects for loss of ice at the North Pole and South Pole, rising ocean levels. There are a whole lot of other problems that are linked to carbon dioxide atmosphere. I'll be more specific here than just talking about climate change or global warming. In general, veganism is all we've got. And that movement in this pervasive, corrosive, corrupting way has become utterly dominated by porn stars, by people who are willing to exploit their beauty and their appearance sexually. And again, there are even deeper, further problems with this. I've talked to Joey Carbstrong a couple of times. Maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times. I think 3 times, maybe 4. Okay, let's say 3 times I've talked to Joey Carbstrong. And these were not really long, deep conversations. I've talked to him like 3 times. I remember when Joey Carbstrong was pudgy. Like, he was never enormously fat. I remember he had a belly, like we say, a beer gut. He was pudgy, and his face was pudgy. Okay, Joey Carbstrong, his whole career, he has been under enormous pressure to be gym maxed out, and he did it. He's leaned out. He's gotten lean and muscular, and he wears revealing attire all the time. You can see the effect, again, this kind of selection pressure, this reward pressure over time. Now, Joey Carbstrong is open enough about this. He has 0 book learning. He has very little formal education, but also very little informal education. And one of the reasons he talked to me one time, he was trying to get me to basically provide intellectual material for him, which came to the right place. I understand that. I think he does. I've had other YouTubers tell me this, that he kind of reaches out to them and says, look, what do I say about this topic? Can you do some research or talk me through kind of step by step what he should say in response to this kind of argument or on this issue, like to work out some kind of bullet points they should work with. Again, this isn't evil, but I know he does lean on other YouTubers, and it might have been one of the conversations with him. He was thinking I could play that kind of role for him, maybe once in a while or whatever. There is absolutely no pressure on Joey Carbstrong to read Aristotle. Okay, there's no pressure on Joey Carbstrong to be well informed about current politics in Iran, China, Syria, Libya, Donald Trump within the UK. Zero. So I'm just saying, this selection bias, this system of rewards, it's exerting its influence on everyone all the time. Do you want to jump into this thing? Sorry, you just nope.
I just say,
Yeah. Do it. I don't care.
So before I ever got involved with ISIL, when I went vegan, there was the expectation that it would also lead to my weight loss.
Right.
There was a time when I was heavier. I was fat, and I lost weight, and I felt there was kind of a sense in which by the time I was in communication with ISIL, like, oh, I'm at a certain weight that this is, I'm not ashamed to be vegan, but like, certainly there was this kind of implicit element behind veganism. I didn't go vegan for weight loss. I became vegan because of the environmental aspects and also the ethical aspects. That was what was convincing me that I should be vegan. But yeah, certainly I assumed that it would mean better health and better fitness. Right. So I just say this is going on. It's not just because I've been on YouTube. Even for a normal person who doesn't do anything on social media, the expectation is if you are not in shape, then if you if you're vegan, just pretend that you're not, or just.
Right. Well, so the other side, obviously, I agree with everything you just said, but it's not just about fat versus thin, right? There's also being too skinny. Just being too scrawny. So again, Lucy Munson, this other YouTuber, I've only seen her wearing winter coats. It's winter, and she's in a cold climate. She don't wear a winter coat with a big scarf. Okay, what if she's really scrawny under the winter? Then they'll attack you for that. It's like, oh no, you should be more muscular. You should be more like as a woman, you should be more muscular, more curvy. You should have the idealized female body. You can't be scrawny. I have even heard Earthling Ed talk about that. Like, these the pressure they have to not look like a skeleton, to not look too thin, to not look whatever. So that can be there for men and women. So if you are not this, right. And look, again, in terms of the power, right?
It's not bad for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
You can be as fat as, you can be out of shape.
So I forget if this example is in the book or not, but it's one of the first examples that comes to my mind. There was a political movement for space colonization. So you guys may be surprised to hear this. Some ways not that surprising. There was a formal political movement, and they had conferences and collected donations. And you can imagine they were in some ways linked to like university research groups, but in some ways they were just a straight up political movement to advocate for the creation of a permanently inhabited small city, a permanently inhabited town off of the surface of planet Earth. Now, this is long story short here. At their earliest conferences, they were assuming that this would either be on Mars or on the moon. But again, they brought in real scientists, they brought in people with real credentials. And what they very rapidly discovered, and this is relevant still today because of Elon Musk, the madness of Elon Musk and billions of dollars being wasted, or at least millions of dollars being wasted. This fantasy that comes out of science fiction. What they very rapidly discovered was that no, it would be so counterproductive to try to build a human inhabited enclosure on the surface of the moon or Mars, that you would be better off just building a kind of mega space station, building an orbiting space station that has an enclosed environment that people can be somewhat comfortable in. That in terms of the number of millions of dollars and so on and so forth. So then they had conference after conference, and they published books and publications. And you can see this. So this is a dead movement now. It was formally disbanded. I believe they finally called it the L5 movement, with reference to Lagrange point. So I'm not going to Google this now, but if it's not L5, it's L6 or something. When you look at the YouTube videos, so at the time these were VHS recordings. This is before YouTube that this happened. Okay, so their agenda, on the one hand, is to get really politically sophisticated people who can actually influence and lobby the political parties. So that's one kind of person they want. But on the other hand, you can imagine they want scientists, legitimate scientists from a whole different variety of disciplines, of fields. So you want one guy who's a specialist in how the food is going to be produced. You want another guy who's a specialist on zero gravity and the effects on human health. There are all these different things. And by the way, this has to include people giving birth, right? Like you have to have a space station where women can get pregnant and give birth. So all these kinds of research where they're bringing those people together to present their research and publish their findings. But they're also, to some extent, fundraising for and donating money. So this is a huge. I'm sorry, guys. Guess what? Veganism and ecology is way simpler. It's way easier. And when you go through these videos, 95% of these people are ugly. They are old, they are ugly, they are out of shape, and they are real experts in whatever their field might be. And the funny thing is, if you scroll through to look at the exceptions, once in a while, oh wow, there's a really good-looking woman at the podium. Once in a while, oh, there's a really good-looking man, a guy who's handsome and fit and wearing a nice suit. Those are the snake oil salesmen. Those, they were people who basically managed to get time at the podium to sell some kind of bullshit money-making thing or feature. Because there were a couple. There were some show business people, put it that way. Now, again, I'm actually not aware of this. It's possible at some point they had someone who was a science fiction author or even a movie star from a science fiction. I can imagine someone that coming to a conference like that. Just all those people worship. Obviously, they all love science fiction. They love Isaac Asimov. They love movies about Mars and space colonies. It's possible they had some Hollywood people like that come. Oh, here's the actress from Total Recall. Here's the actress from this movie about Mars or space exploration. Like, here's Sigourney Weaver. It's possible they had some sexy people, men or women, related to that side of it, right? But they were not the leaders of the movement. They were not the people on stage. They were not the people who controlled the money and the fundraising and the destiny movement. They were a sideshow, right? And then there's a real show. There's a real political movement. There's real science, real politics, all this stuff going on. And with veganism, with our situation today, right? There is only the sideshow. There is only the freak show. And that has only gotten worse 2014 to present. There's nothing real to contrast it to, you know? So look, I'm just going to come back to Melissa. You can say nothing. You can say anything online. You know, I have suggested to Melissa that she start a new YouTube channel that is a parody of fitness influencers, where it's this whole culture of have the biggest bum you can have or whatever. And we do some combination of, gym footage of working out at the gym and, deadpan serious monologues that are intentionally hilarious, that are satirizing, this side of the culture. For me also, in terms of my schedule, I'm probably not going to be able to do it within the next 3 months. But I also have made it a priority to get back in shape at the gym. I had a big struggle with coronavirus, long COVID, long symptoms. I had a lot of knock-on health problems from the trip I made to Thailand for the court case that really, really negatively impacted my health for more than a year, 2 years or something. For me also, I'm getting back in shape at the gym is one of my top 3 priorities, and it's completely meaningless, and it's completely pointless, and it doesn't last, and it doesn't accumulate. I've had periods of my life where I'm spending 3 hours a day in the gym, and again, then you get out of shape for whatever reason. Like, you can just get out of shape because you have travel. You've got to go from hotel to hotel, and you're out of shape for those reasons. You can get out of shape because you get sick. You can get out of shape because there's a funeral in your family and you stop everything you're doing and whatever. You get out of shape for all kinds of reasons. Like, okay, I put 3 hours a day into working out at the gym. That produces a certain level of fitness that lasts a very short time. And, the reality is, if you had spent those 3 hours a day living the life of the mind, learning a new language, it's an obvious example, but anything, studying philosophy, studying politics, and again, it can include learning about current politics, learning way more than what you will learn from the nightly news about what's really going on in Libya, in Syria, in Myanmar, whatever, or here at home, local politics at your local city hall, within your own city. If you had put 3 hours a day into that, you will actually become a better person. You will actually gain the ability to change the world, to make the world a better place in a very meaningful way. And I've got to include this in the list. What the life of the mind includes the creative arts. For me too, okay, 3 hours a day at the gym. You guys may not know this. I have zero education in music. I never learned to read sheet music. What if I have 3 hours a day actually learning how to sing, actually learning how to read sheet music, actually learning how to maybe play keyboard, learning how to sing to a beat, whatever it is I want to do. What if I develop as a musician, as a creative artist? What if I develop as a comedian? What if it's 3 hours a day working on my set and going and doing live stand-up comedy? There's all this stuff that'll be more meaningful and more rewarding, like literally for you in the audience, whoever you are who sees this video. And I'm doing none of that because instead I'm doing hundreds and hundreds of push-ups, a completely brainless, repetitious activity. So yeah, I think Melissa's already said enough. That is absolutely the pressure she's under on social media. And that pressure comes from all kinds of different people, but don't kid yourself. It primarily comes from women. It's not really men, because if men want to look at a beautiful naked woman, they're just going to click on a different channel or go to a different website. I think it is actually primarily a pressure from women. So this is kind of forcing you into and then reinforcing a meaningless life, the life of the body. And this is, guys, look again, I'm one of the lucky few. Okay, sorry. The vast majority of vegan activists, the vast majority of vegan YouTube channels, vegan intellectuals, vegan authors, they do way worse than I've done. If you think this channel is a failure, take a look at my contemporaries and how they turned out. In so many ways, I've been lucky. I've been lucky to have you terrible people in the audience. still listening to what I have to say. I've been lucky to have, 1,000 people who are interested in my opinion about Aristotle or about other really, hard-hitting, intellectually substantive and politically important issues. And the vast majority of people will never have that. The vast majority of people who have PhDs will never have that. I used to have a lot of friends with PhDs. They could never get 10 people to care about what they said about Aristotle. Well, having 1,000 people who care and interested to turn in, that's really worth something. So there is this counterposing point of view that my whole perspective is sex negative and rooted in a kind of Christian cultural guilt trip. I think this is a good place to end the video, right? Like, oh man, I remember these people. I remember when the Free the Nipple movement did not have any ironical self-awareness. There are these people who argue passionately, if only we could set aside the darkness of the Dark Ages, if only we could set aside these medieval Christian preconceptions and hang-ups, if only all of us could be slutty enough on Instagram, if only we could all be libertine enough on Instagram, then we will pass through the gateway to a better world in which everybody is accepting of Stefania Ferrario and Tash Peterson doing lesbian porn, and it's just no big deal, and it's not perceived as an issue one way or another. Okay? Now, how did we drift away from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? So isn't what you're saying that in future, nobody will have to be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? I notice we're not drifting towards a world in which you get to be your own personal Jesus. You get to be your own personal Martin Luther King Jr. You seem to be drifting towards a world in which everyone gets to be a porn star, so nobody is going to judge anyone else harshly for being a porn star, right? But the problem we have now, and the problem we're going to continue to have in the future, unless we get motivated to change it and solve it, is the exact opposite. Nobody holds Stefania Ferrario to the same intellectual standards they would hold an ugly man. Nobody holds her to the same intellectual standards they would hold an elderly woman, however attractive or unattractive. If you're an elderly woman, you're expected to be wise. If you're an ugly man, you're expected to know what you're talking about. You're expected to compete with Ben Shapiro, not Ben Shapiro's sister. Ben Shapiro's sister got famous for the size of her breasts and because people found her sexually attractive. Period. Nobody has ever held her to the same intellectual standards that they hold her own brother. Her brother isn't ugly, but you know what I mean. His fame and his reputation is not based on his sex appeal. He is expected every single time he gets on the microphone to know what he's talking about and talk with passion and conviction and clarity, whatever. Okay. There has never been pressure on Stefania Ferrario to be the vegan equivalent of Ben Shapiro, to live up to those standards, political standards, intellectual standards, ethical standards of Ben Shapiro. And there never will be. Okay? This is not going to change. The further corruption of the movement, and frankly, the further corruption of our culture through porn and through various shades of gray prostitution, because that's what this really is that we're talking about, that is not going to lead to an intellectual paradise in which people are immune to the effect of seeing nipples, in which people are not seduced, they're not swayed by human appearance or human sexual attraction. Now look, it's rare that we can quantify this kind of thing, but I want to just give some examples where we quantify it. I went into a bakery the other day. It is both a bakery and a coffee shop. So they have a bakery side, and they have an espresso machine and sell cafe latte, cappuccino, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there were 3 young women working. 2 of these young women were moderately ugly, okay? And one was strikingly beautiful. And she knows it. She had her makeup done up in this certain way. The other 2 girls were not making any effort with their appearance. Her makeup and her clothing, she is strikingly beautiful. Okay, so tell me something. The 2 ugly girls, is the bakery going to pay the 2 ugly girls $15 an hour and pay the beautiful one $100 an hour? Okay, this girl, the beautiful one, if you don't pay her more, you can't keep her on staff. She has options. She has other ways to make money that the ugly girls don't have. So what are we doing as a culture? Are we progressing toward a culture that just recognizes, well, look, so again, the beautiful girl, it doesn't even have to be OnlyFans. It doesn't have to be pornography. It doesn't have to be stripping, right? She can just work as a bartender, right? As a sexy bartender instead of being a coffee bartender at the same kind of job, pouring coffee, right? And make vastly more money than she's making here. But the reality is the door is open for all kinds of jobs there because we have, yeah, I know it's pathetic. There are so many jobs that should not be based on your physical attractiveness, but they are in our culture. Melissa was giving the example of being a sexy bank teller, and I hate this. There are all kinds of jobs that should be about, how well you understand the stock market and economics and things. Being a weather girl, gee, you should be someone who's really studied the very complicated science of weather forecasting. But no, this is also just based on sex skills. So there are all these jobs that shouldn't be based on sex skills. Okay, but this girl has options. This girl, you're not going to keep her on staff for 3 months if you don't pay her way more than the ugly girls. Okay, do I have to spell out for you what the implications are in the vegan movement? So look, guys, for years I was studying Chinese. Melissa also. I think Melissa has 5 years of studying Chinese language. Not one person ever has said to me, wow, it's really important that we have someone who is bilingual in English and Chinese in this movement. Wow, that's a really important role for you to play, is that you are back and forth between Taiwan and America, between Hong Kong and Canada, between communist China and the Western world and Europe, and that you can talk about what's happening in the vegan movement in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in communist China, that you can talk in depth and profundity about what's going on in terms of the Buddhist influence in veganism in the Chinese world, the Taoist influence, the communist influence. Communism's still a big deal in that part of the world, in case you didn't know. What a really important, valuable thing to have in the vegan movement. No one ever said, we want to invite you to speak at this conference or even this Skype call, like even an internet conference. Never once. Not one valuable, positive thing came into my life from the study of Chinese. Not within the vegan movement. Okay. I wrote a children's storybook in Chinese. It's a children's storybook that is partly vegan propaganda. I've had people telling me how brilliant that storybook was, how it made them break down weeping. They showed it to their mother or their grandmother and the reaction they had. This is such a great storybook for kids, blah, 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 blah. Again, it's originally written in Chinese. Then we got an English translation. There are translations of this story into a bunch of other language. Absolutely zero positivity. And this is now over like a 10-year period. We're talking about zero. And literally the only exception is like, oh yeah, there was a woman who got in touch with me to illustrate the children's storybook because she wanted to have sex with me. That was the reality. She wasn't even capable of illustrating the storybook. The only attention, the only audience interaction that's worth anything for me as a heterosexual man are the heterosexual women trying to have sex with me. If you were a gay man, it would be different. So on and so forth. You can insert some footnotes here. Okay. So the life of the mind, even in this crude sense. And look, guys, with Chinese, I'm not the only one. When you add up other factors, okay, I don't just know Chinese. Political science background, political philosophy background, Buddhism background, study of religious background. Like there are a lot of things that do make me, especially how many people speak Laotian. I was back and forth Thailand. I was speaking Thai. All these other vegans in Chiang Mai couldn't speak Thai. Like, well, okay, there's actually something to build on here, guys. There's an opportunity. Zero. Okay. So the sense in which the life of the body and the bimboism of the vegan movement has suffocated out any and every other possibility for something positive to happen. I see that and feel that in my own life, and in the constellation of at least several thousand people I've had ongoing contact with in the vegan movement over 10 years. Like the people I've been in contact with within English-speaking veganism, it's significant. So, again, okay, I'm not trying to hate on the guy. But just to give an example, someone who's not a fitness influencer. Ali Tabrizi. So again, if you search Ali Tabrizi, there's more than one person with the name. Ali Tabrizi is the man who made Seaspiracy. So Seaspiracy was a movie that was kind of sort of a sequel to Cowspiracy. Okay. When he was on YouTube, I saw it. His YouTube videos are all deleted. 100% of the response was women saying he was hot, women saying they wanted to have sex with him. He's an okay looking guy. I just sorry. I don't remember him ever taking his shirt off. I don't really think he was in great shape. But okay, just saying. He's not an obvious, but he was a sex object for these women. That was 100% of the interest and enthusiasm. There was no pressure on him to be an intellectual, no pressure on him to be a credible political leader. There was no pressure on him to be the vegan equivalent of Martin Luther King Jr., which is this game we're all playing, is to invoke the name of Martin Luther King Jr., invoke the name of Mohandas Gandhi, and then we go to OnlyFans. Then we switch to being James Aspie on OnlyFans. We switch to porn. We switch to Stefania Ferrario, right? So this is like velvet glove cast in iron. This is the iron fist under the velvet glove. So the iron fist is fucking hardcore porn. And then we're pulling the velvet glove of civil disobedience in the Martin Luther King Jr. tradition and in the Mohandas Gandhi tradition over it. It's the velvet glove over our iron claw. Here in the beginning. There's no pressure on him to develop in that way of any kind. Ali Tabrizi was absolutely treated as a sex object, as a male beauty icon on YouTube. And of course, it had an impact on his career when he revealed that I assume they met during that time, but he met and then had this serious girlfriend. And to my knowledge, he's still with her to this day. That then very much changed the dynamic around his channel. Okay. He comes out with Seaspiracy. And again, no. You think there's pressure in the movement, like for artistic excellence, for intellectual excellence, for ethical excellence, for political sophistication, for higher levels? Here's my point about Ali Tabrizi. I knew that guy for years, on and off. We talked, and then a couple years went by, we talking. Never once did he say to me, "Hey, it's really important that we have someone like you who speaks Chinese." I'm not just talking about Tess Begg. Like, I'm not just talking about James Aspie. I'm not just talking about Joey Carbstrong, right? Like, even someone like Ali Tabrizi, who is half a step closer to being some kind of legitimate intellectual. I mean, he's not. He doesn't have an intellectual bone in his body, but he made this film, whatever you want to say. He made Seaspiracy. You know what I mean? Not once. So, you guys know, I used to talk to a natural vegan, ended badly. Okay? Not once did she say, wow, it's really important to have someone who's studying Chinese, speaks Chinese, someone who has this background in Buddhist philosophy, ancient philosophy, or something. Someone who has this background in Aristotle, political science, whatever you want to take from across the board. Not once. We are in a movement where all that anyone talks about is ass. And where the entire criticism of me either has to do with my physical fitness, my body, my appearance, or my sex life, which I refuse to lie about after so many years of being, defamed in the worst way possible. It's like, look, I'm going to turn this around with honesty and open-heartedness. I'm going to talk about what the reality of my sex life is. You know what I mean?
I don't think I'm revealing anything because these are all issues that you've talked about in your YouTube videos. So one example of a vegan YouTuber who had quite a following, in part because of her beauty, in part because of her appearance, is Kristen Leo.
Yes.
And we've seen in the last year, she tried to make changes in her life. I think she's 33 years old. And
it's a really good example. Go on.
Right. She wanted to be more of an intellectual.
That's right.
For a few years, she tried to do political commentary, or at least social commentary about working conditions in garment factories and so on. And she
tried to do Marxism light, you might say.
Yeah. And you got to see, there was this quote that you took from one of her videos. "I'm just a dumb bitch.
That's right.
I'm done with this."
She said that of herself. That's right. Yep.
So you saw this collapse of that dream of hers.
Yeah.
So she's shifted, trying to do more artistic style, and also continuing to do commentary.
You don't know what Suzuki is what she tries to do now. I mean, just
yes.
But yeah.
So she had this brief time where she was on Twitch, and she was trying to do this, talk show just by herself. But, she had the comments open, and you commented, actually, I know something about these factory conditions.
Right.
You know, I lived in Laos. I lived in Cambodia.
I've done formal research on that too. Yeah, I mean, I really do know this stuff. It's not
Yeah.
just anecdotal. Yeah.
So you see how there is no kind of just
that's right.
reflection of saying, oh, this guy actually knows something that I don't.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to do more research on this. So, you know, she is somebody who's ostensibly still vegan, you know, and she can't be positive toward you. She can't see, you know, you're somebody who's got a lot more to say about
it's a
political
really
science.
Example. It's a really telling example.
Right.
That's right. No. So look, I mean, there are, I don't want to make a 1 hour monologue about the significance of Kristen Leo in this, but no, it's really true. It's really telling. On one level, you can just look at Kristen Leo as someone who tried to transition. She was a model, and I don't know how much success she had, but she worked as a model, so it was all about her physical beauty, face and body, and so on. And she had been briefly an airline stewardess. You know, no offense, but also very much about her physical appearance. You know, she tried to transition from being someone who was an ex-model talking about fashion and purses and high-heeled shoes and shit, to doing something more intellectually substantive, more politically substantive. And then she said, forget it, it's not for me. And she regressed. She went back into what she herself would call dumb bitch content. She described herself as just a dumb bitch who cares about clothes and wants to have nice things, and exploiting her sex life, you know, to some extent exploiting her physical beauty, but she's getting older, maybe 33 years old. She can't really do that anymore. She never was that good looking. I mean, she never had the chance Hitomi Mochizuki had. She herself, we have heard her making the comparison that she feels she should be getting as many views as Hitomi Mochizuki when she makes a similar video about her ghetto fabulous life in New York, her glamorous life in New York. So, you know, we have heard that. And also there is a lot of exploiting her sex life, dating life, her, she's gone from being heterosexual to some kind of lesbian, you know. So to what extent she's going to settle on being a bisexual, we don't know. But she's been attempting to transition. Yeah. But so that's one side of it. You're right. She is a kind of telling and significant example in those ways. But her interactions with me.
She could have collaborated with you.
Right. That's right. Right. That's telling in another way. That's telling in the same way with Ali Tabrizi and all these other people. That's right. That there was never any openness to, there was never any possibility of even having a conversation with someone who really does have expertise, who really does have something to share in exactly the areas of your own intellectual and political interest. That's right. So, I mean, really, Kristen Leo is the perfect illustration of the ways in which I am alone in the vegan movement, why I'm alone, the mechanism of my isolation. And the truth is, we all know, if I get back in shape at the gym, you guys can actually see my forearm there. I'm not that far out of shape. I can be back to doing 200 push-ups a day and 300 push-ups a day in no time now. Whether or not I can sustain it is another problem. Just, you know. But anyway, if I get back into shape, if I start doing shirtless live streams, it won't help. It won't help me. I will still be, I mean, put it this way. I used to have this slogan on my YouTube channel all the time. I had the slogan in French at the start and end of every video. So it was graffiti in French, and I didn't spray paint that graffiti. And it said, you know, those who are awake are the nightmare of those who are still sleeping, you know, and it was in French. I used to speak French. It's been a long time now. I've certainly, my ability to speak French has rusted away. But anyway, you know, we are basically in a situation where the intellectuals are hated and feared by the non-intellectuals. Those who live the life of the mind are the nightmare of those who just want to live the life of the body.